Hello everyone and welcome back to the Park Insider channel. At Jurassic World Evolution 2, we are diving into the next build of the park in section 7 on Isla Nublar. Last time we did a walkthrough through the section that we call the Agua Plaza with all the new lagoons, but today we are starting at this build with a speed build. As you can see, we already had this nice place for a little bit of a cinematic view, basically, of what it's going to be. So this is a small enclosure, and it is packed in the corner between the lagoon areas, and it is a nice fill up of this area. So let's start with this build. So basically what I tried to start was first off recording away from the recording to figure out what is a possibility for this whole build that we're going to do. And already had planned the dinosaurs for this. So the Minmi was the main attraction idea for this enclosure. And I was thinking of something with small dinosaurs, and we call it the Minmi World, and that basically is what is being called after I finished it. The Minmi is going to be not the only animal in this enclosure. I wanted to add two more species we're going to talk about later on. But the whole thing of the build itself was that I wanted to make an enclosure that felt open. It felt like there were no large fences and walls in between, and people can just watch it like a normal zoo. So there are many builds that we can make with these. We can of course do what I am working on here right now with planthers and everything, and I decided to just skip a couple of bases with planters and use the rocks in between, so we have some natural barriers and then some planters in between as well. And that felt a little bit more natural, more related to zoos I visited in the Netherlands, and I like the whole idea that you can just lounge a little bit on the rocks if you hang over it, and you can see the Minmi grazing and walking by and everything. So it is easy to just block them off, but I do not want to have like all those notifications or all these ideas that it's not really that safe. So I wanted to use the invisible fence. As you can see at this point, that I tried to make a couple of barriers in between. So we got the rocks and then we have some plants behind it before I started with the invisible barrier. That is basically going to be around the pathway, so people can basically have the whole safe feeling of the fence idea, of course. And visitors of the park already have been informed about the invisible fences by then. And it is a pretty nice build so far, and I'm happy with how things went. As you can see, it's a bit turning around. It's a bit of puzzling, connecting it, making sure there's enough space. Sometimes I had to replace something or remove something. But this was already looking pretty good in my opinion. So I continue with the whole look of the rocks here, as you can see, and then eventually started with the fence, and that was a little bit more tricky at the beginning because you had to see how far you can get close with the whole fence to the decoration. Sometimes it's a pain, other times it's just perfect. And I didn't want to make it like that clutchy with all the items as well as the open space in between the fences, because we do not have, of course, the no collision mode of this, because that's not the case with this game. But it still works out pretty well, and that is basically the whole point of what I'm trying to show here as well. I wanted to use a larger rock, as you could see, but it didn't really work out eventually. So I removed it because I figured out, oh, I have the fence that has to go turn around, and then it is less space for the animals. And I'm like, yeah, well, the small animals, but they need space. They need their space, so that is going to be still the case. I eventually, as you can see, I placed one of the Malta wall decorations in between, and I felt like that was a pretty cool idea because I'm using the walls a lot in Section 7 since the whole update has given us all these new detail decorations. So as you can see, that is looking pretty sick. So I was trying to figure out how to get around in the more rounder edges, as you can see with the fence. First, I want to try out with a curve, but it doesn't really matter if you have the pot where it looks round already on the edges. It's cool enough, and everything else is just making sure it works basically. Um, while we are continuing with the builds over here, as you can see, it's pretty much still continuing all around. Even the daylight is slowly moving away. I have a 24-hour spam time in daylight, day to night cycle, so it is staying on the perfect lightning I want to use for builds. Daylight is pretty good, but sometimes you have a lot of shadows. As you can see here, there's already a lot of shadows, but we can still work with it. I like to set the sun on a spot that you have no large shadows. Everything is light up with sunbeams and makes it easier to work on it. But we're gonna talk a little bit about the species here. So if you follow me on the social media already, then you have already seen the second species I've posted earlier. Maybe the third one I already posted as well. But I wanted to use some different species alongside the Minmi. Minmi is like 1 meter height. It's pretty small compared to the Ankylosaurus and Sauropelta, for example, a little bit bigger. But with Jurassic World Evolution 2, there are so many more smaller dinosaurs. I have checked in a different build, a different save, how big some of the other species are, like Ankylosaurus and everything. And some, like Crichtonsaurus, are slightly longer in length, a little bit higher maybe, but they look the same size. But I didn't want to continue with any same species or subspecies, so I was going for something else, and I already had something in mind, but I want to check out what else there was. Eventually, of course, he stick with the Homalocephali, and that is the second dinosaur that is going to be joining the Minmi in this spot, and also because I love packies with Ankylosaur in an enclosure, so having Minmi World as a location where we have Mataceros in the first game, for example, with Dracorex and the Crichtonsaurus, which are also way bigger in the first game than in this game. The whole idea of having Minmi World, as in Mini World, is that we have a small Ankylosaur, and then we also added a small Pachycephalosaur. So that is the whole reason why I eventually picked up with the Homalocephali. Now, there's a third species that we can talk about right now because this build is continuing for a bit. But the third species is I had some comments from a friend of mine, my friend Gordon, that I talk a lot with about builds and everything, that I have added the Listersaurus to this, and I'm working at this point on a timeline for the whole Jurassic World reimagined idea, the whole timeline that I have for these builds, these parks, where Listersaurus is a project of Biosyn. But of course, like my older builds, like Mataceros had all the dinosaurs we've unlocked in the main game, and eventually you can unlock the Proceratosaurus. And the whole idea is that in the timeline, it is a species that came later to the build. The same thing with the Minmi, actually, that I have in my notes. So Listersaurus is the same thing, that it came after this build has been completed for a longer time. And we have Biosyn species in this enclosure, which is just the typical 2022 skin of the Lystrosaurus, which I prefer as rescues. They have been rescued from the black market, from some other locations, and while there are many more species that have been rescued, like the Kentrosaurus pierce, that we have added to the the Pachyrhinosaurus, that's the one, Pachyrhinosaurus grove. And eventually he will be moved again. I already have different plans again for the Kentrosaurus. But Pierce is a rescue from the Mantha Corporation. And the same with Lystrosaurus is that there are probably more species, but several of them are introduced in the park. It's something that happens with zoos as well. If an animal cannot return to the wild, sometimes they keep them, give them a home, and that's basically the case with bears from Europe, for example, bears in Europe and Asia that have been captured, being used for entertainment. They've rescued, and are given a home on a reservoir or reserve. I mean, a reserve or a zoo sometimes, and depending on the situation and who's taking care of it and the costs and everything. Lystrosaurus is having the same idea with this. But we also have a different Lystrosaur. We have one that is a second generation, as I call them. It's a Lystrosaur that's made by InGen with the template that is used by Biosyn. The whole Biosyn story is something I'm not going to talk about for the timeline that I've used, but it's something that will come eventually. I have a whole idea, I have a whole story around it, what happened with Biosyn, that in this timeline is different, a little bit different than the movies, actually canon. By now, we already have finished the whole layout of the enclosure itself. As you can see, I love to use these large bush trees to cover things up. These are the best decoration trees we have. Those are definitely the best ones. You can just block things off. It looks realistic. And if you want something to be hidden behind it, you do it. So I want to have a fence gate over here, and I've seen this with Evolution Square that is using the whole gate of the tour and of the safari tour, and I love the idea of having the Jurassic Park one as a nice looking gate for something that has less security, needs less security. The only downside of this, well, it opens up if you drive through it. If you manually drive through it, or if you walk through it, it opens up. But if you have vehicles connected to the area with the ranger post and you wanted to move towards it automatically, or you select something like you have to go to the homocephaly that's stuck in a tree, happens quite a bit while building this. It will not use the gate. It cannot use the gate, so it will never arrive into the enclosure. So I had to make a second area where basically where the viewing dome is over there. There's a second gate after I built everything, so that's one of the things that came later. And well, it worked at least. We have an entrance, and we have a nice looking entrance as well. That's basically it. So the whole theme for the environment that I decided to pick, that's something I already picked up before I start working on this, is that I wanted to use something different with biomes. We got a jungle, a forest, and we got some open fields. I like to do something different with this, and as you can see, I'm using decoration as well. I forgot about this. It's there, I noticed them, but while talking about it, I forgot about the bamboo poles. But yeah, here we're already seeing it. I'm using red trees. We're using the fall leaves trees from I think it's a temperate one. I cannot read from the little window I'm watching while doing a voiceover at this point. But I love the whole idea that there's some trees that are always red. There are trees that have reddish or orange-brown leaves all the time, less green. I like the whole idea of having these mixed up with green trees. We still have the tropical trees in between, as you can see in the front around the barrier, because it is a tropical location, of course. it is still tropical, but I love these new trees to make things different. And Nublar and Sorna might be tropical, but there is a lot more going on the islands with trees. We got redwood forests, for example, on Sorna, and I have seen a lot of more different trees, as you can see in surroundings as well, and in the brush tool of the basic brush tool of this island, of the jungle one, that it looks way more temperate as well, so it's tropical temperate. I've waited a little bit and switched to the daytime, as you can see, so I have a little bit more idea of what I'm doing with the lightning. There were a lot of plants I've placed. I did not place it everywhere, but I wanted to use like small patches, sometimes connected. Only issue, same with I said with the homocephaly getting stuck, for example, is that they try to get around one decoration but get stuck on a rock. And that's only with the smaller species most of the time. Compi had this, and homocephaly and Listosaurus both had that. Just removed it a little bit, waited till they're gone, replaced it a little bit further away from each other so it won't happen again, hopefully. I also decided to come back on the whole viewing dome, that I wanted to have a viewing dome of as well. I definitely want something, and this is something I think this should be a quality of life tool, that we could make hotspots for guests, because this whole area, after I finished, is not being visited by guests on the whole pathway, because they do not have any interesting buildings over there. So I was thinking about the whole Planet Zoo vibe that has people just walking around, even without any view. Say they can see dinosaurs, or they can see animals between fences, through glass and everything. So they go there no matter what. It's not the case with the whole Jurassic World Evolution setup for this. So yeah, that's a shame, but I do like that it's like a pretty quiet place, especially for recording. Not many people walking around, or just the sounds of the guests doing oh every time. So yeah, that's why we also have the dome. So at least there are people there. There are also people in the viewing dome, and it looks great from the view from there. It's you can see the cute little dinosaurs walking around. It's nice. It's pretty cool. One of the things I like in Section 7 is the build of these anthracines, basically with the herbivore sign, making it different than any others. We got some small ones. You got like the simpler designs, but this is a little bit more part of the environment as well. Makes it a little bit more cooler. So while this build is going towards the end of the speed build, I want to talk a little bit about the extra that I already announced on Twitter and on Instagram. Is that I'm going back into the naming of dinosaurs. I haven't done this since the Jurassic World Evolution first game, where I had a lot of names for individual dinosaurs as well as group names. I wanted to go back to it. I didn't do it for the builds that were Nublar, the 3 Nublar parks, only the specifically named ones, like we had a Toro, we had a Bumpy, those are pretending to be those. And I haven't done it with the builds afterwards in it. So everything from Mataceros till Sona has names, has unique names, have alphas and everything. Alphas also something I haven't done after, because Jurassic World Evolution 2 has different skin system. You can make alphas, but somehow I don't need them. I'm not sure why. That's maybe it was fun back then, and now it's like, yeah, I don't need it. But yeah, I wanted to name, and I wanted to start with the Minmi. I wasn't really thinking about naming like group names, and now I also want to do the group names, but I also have individual names for each species. So what I did is I was suddenly thinking about the live streams from Frontier and Jurassic World Evolution, and how I if I got time, I love to watch them. So I named the Minmi to like a appreciation to the mod team and the community teams, the stream team of Frontier while doing Jurassic World Evolution. So we got, of course, Jens, we got Rich is there, we got Tim, we got Heather, which is an awesome moderator and personally know and had a lot of fun with different games a while ago. Never knew she was a moderator by then. And we got Francisca and we got Lydia, which are just amazing people, and I love watching them on live streams. I enjoy so much what they do, and I was thinking, I'm gonna name them after them. Those were the people I picked out because I see them most of the time, and they're very happy about it. I've seen the reactions on this; they love it, and it's just something to show appreciation. We have reached the end of the video and we have some cinematic footage as well. But before we end, please leave a like, subscribe to my channel if you want to follow more about Section 7 and its builds, and comment down below what you think of this build itself and the idea of having red trees in a jungle biome. I hope to see you next time. Take care and bye bye.